See, they sit there and tell the pro-life followers that if it has human DNA and human genes, then it must be a human. But that kind of way of thinking completely ignores the fact that before a certain point in pregnancy, without medical intervention, that fetus would not be a viable human being because it would not be able to sustain its own life outside the womb. It literally needs the entire body of the uterus owner to sustain its own survival. Let's say it's not a Smith Morton. Say she naturally goes into labor before 20 weeks. There is a massive possibility that even at 20 weeks, that is not a viable human being without medical intervention. But the point that everyone is trying to get across to the pro-life movement is that in these discussions, every single one of you try to ignore the life of the uterus owner. The pro-life movement, again, use trigger words to pull at your heartstrings, play with your emotions, to mess with your mind. Words like sanctity of life. They also tell you things like, well, she got pregnant, it's her responsibility, which completely ignores the fact that it takes two individuals to create a human. But for some reason, they only want to hold the uterus owner accountable. For some reason, they only want to make laws for the uterus owner. Like I said in the past video, they are not making it a law to make it illegal to, even though there are cells in the that can create life. In the process of creating a human, spermies are just as important as eggs. But the pro-lifers only want to target the uterus and the eggs. Why is that? The owner of the uterus most likely has humans that love them and depend on them. Some humans who get Smith Mortons already have children who are living on this earth, walking, talking, breathing, going to school, whole 9 yards. The pro-life movement pushes the narrative that the fetus is so important that they make their followers completely negate the entire life of the uterus owner. Those children that are already walking and talking need their mother. Here's yet another layer of it. Say something happened to my aunt and needed some form of life support, and you just so happen to match every single one of the criteria to be an organ donor for her. And they gave me the right to be like, oh, because that person matches, I want to force that person to be a blood bag, be a life support machine, hook that person up to my aunt and make them continue my aunt's life, sustain my aunt's life. Forcing somebody to continue a pregnancy and go through labor, all to sustain the life of a human that they don't want in their life, is essentially the same thing. The pro-life movement literally wants to force uterus owners to be blood bags, to be life support machines for individuals that they do not want to give birth to and do not want to raise. The pro-life movement tells all of its followers to shame and guilt trip people who have Smith Mortons and call them selfish. But in my spirituality, I believe that forcing another human to create another human for the system against their God-given free will is one of the most evil, vile, disgusting things. Not only that, but it can hurt a society. If everyone is forced to give birth to humans that they don't want, the abuse is going to skyrocket. There are already individuals unaliving their babies immediately after birth already. Teenagers at that. The foster care system is so overloaded that there are babies dying in foster care, and the children are having to sleep in the offices because there's nowhere to put them. Not to mention, many of them are missing all throughout the country, and their biological families cannot even find them. So when pro-life says they can just put it up for adoption, why? So that it can go missing? Get abused? Be unalived? At the very least, be mentally, physically, verbally, emotionally, spiritually abused? A whole nother layer to this is the fact that as living, breathing, walking, talking humans in this country, we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Forcing a human to create another human against their free will is forcing them to be a blood bag, an incubator, a blood slave, just cells floating around inside the womb. So regardless of what the humans think about pro-life and pro-choice, it doesn't matter. Another layer is no human is allowed to hurt another human against their God-given free will, to include forced submission. So forcing a uterus owner to give birth against their God-given free will is in fact forcing submission. But then there's another layer to this, because our system already cannot sustain the amount of humans that we have. Not the way that it is working now. I mean, it's not working. That's the point. The way that our system is being conducted right now, it cannot sustain more humans. So creating more humans right now is so irresponsible. Forcing humans to create more humans is even more irresponsible. Them telling us that the economy is bad and people are struggling, but yet they want to force people to give birth to more humans against their God-given free will is absolutely bonkers to me. Then the fact that they want to take away pregnant women's medical insurance while they are forcing them to give birth against their free will, that's abuse on top of abuse on top of abuse, trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. They are intentionally trying to hurt our citizens. A whole nother layer to this is that there are a lot of women who are being hurt right now because of these laws, because the hospitals don't know how to treat them. There are women getting arrested for having natural miscarriages. There are husbands and fathers losing their wives and mothers because these hospitals don't know what to do, because the representatives are incompetent, because they just wanted to force women to give birth against their God-given free will. They want to trigger that generational trauma in ourselves by forcing us to endure the same horrors that our ancestors went through, all in order to try to regain control of the masses. But when it comes down to it, the absolute most important part of all of this is that one human should never be allowed to force another human to give birth against their God-given free will, because that's slavery.